Greetings to all in the love and light of the one infinite creator. My name is Jonathan Tong, and I'm one of the facilitators for the Seattle Law of One meditation and discussion group that meets on Zoom Tuesdays from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We can be found on the list of study groups on the LNO research website. You don't have to live in Seattle to join. All are welcome to join who are available at that time. You just might want to check a time zone converter to see what time that might be where you are if you're not on the west coast of the United States. And we are lucky again to have Jim McCarty joining us for some informal conversation and questions and answers about the law of one. How are you doing today, Jim?
Doing well. Pretty chilly outside, so it's a good day to be inside talking to good friends around the world.
So nice to see you. You and I were chatting a little bit before we started about an update on the folks from Mayfield and other areas of Kentucky or elsewhere that were hit so hard by the tornadoes. I don't even remember how long ago. It's obviously been more than a month. Can you give us a update on how things are going?
Yeah, it was December 10th and 11th when the first tornadoes hit. As far as housing, most of the town itself was destroyed, so everybody had to find some new homes. And just in the paper today, they showed a series of portable homes that they brought into the area for folks who had still not found any. Many have been able to stay in the local state park cabins, and there are some other hotels in surrounding towns that they've been able to stay in until they can find a permanent place to stay. There are groups around the country who have it as their mission to go to areas like Mayfield and Dawson Springs and Bowling Green to help out whenever there is a disaster like this. And they bring their skills to help clear away the rubble. They actually turned the local golf course into a landfill, because there was so much to put, there was no place else to think about. So these other folks that come from around the country bring food, they have clothing, medical supplies, and help out wherever they're needed. And as well as people just in the local area that have come by and right away. They were the first responders actually to bring food and to bring water and to do whatever they could to help out. And I think that there is a great deal of progress that's been made. People are housed somewhere. They all have clothing, they all have food. Food is being served 3 times a day for every meal. So that it does seem like eventually people will be housed. I don't know if there's any chance. I've never read anything or heard whether the town itself will attempt to rebuild. Just almost all of it was destroyed. And around the Bowling Green area on New Year's Day, there were additional tornadoes. And I was mentioning to you that one of the women from Mayfield had had her house destroyed there. She moved to Bowling Green and all of a sudden her apartment was destroyed. So she'd been through 2 tornadoes. So it's a slow process, a long process. President Biden was there. Governor Beshear's been there a number of times. And they've all pledged to do whatever they can to help out. And all around here in Louisville, many of the different businesses have opportunities for their customers to make donations to the folks in Mayfield, many times through Red Cross or Goodwill or known organizations such as that. So there's still an effort going on in that regard. Hope springs eternal, and everybody there is just so glad. Everybody who is still alive is so glad to be alive, because it was a horrendous tornado that went through there. It was 3/4 of a mile wide. It stayed on the ground for 220 miles, and it had wind speeds of over 200 miles an hour. So this was a once in a lifetime. Well, in the last 100 years, there's not been a tornado larger than that. So it's just an incredible situation. The third density is a hard density, as many people have said. That there's 100 times as much catalyst in this density as any other density, according to Ra. And for some people, that was magnified many times over in this experience. And I think that there's a lot of gratitude for those who are still alive. They really have their lives.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for the update on that. Good thing third density only lasts 75,000 years. Man, that's intense. Yeah, and I appreciate the updates on it. I think for folks like myself who are on the other side of the country or far removed from it, it's probably impossible to imagine just how horrific the devastation has been and how difficult it's been for people recovering. And I'm sure there's many other people in other parts of the world who have experienced similar.
Wildfires in Western United States is a good example. I mean, those apparently are still going on. And the devastation there is just as great.
And we can only expect to see more, I suppose.
Well, with global warming, it looks like that's probably one of the products of the global warming that, all over the world, there are floods, wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and it's all connected. And I think it's kind of this is just my opinion, and I could be totally wrong, kind of the karma of Earth for thousands of years of war, and the way that we handle our products, the CO2 into the air, various businesses exchanging and discharging this into the air, and what it does to the atmosphere. And it's, there's a reason for it. And I think we're all here to help correct all of that, hopefully, working together with the knowledge that our ancestors and maybe did not live the lives that were most appropriate. And maybe we were in those incarnations, who knows? And maybe we're here to help rectify the situation. But one way or another, we're here. And service to other people, there's some way that, small or large, we can all be of service and help out in this regard.
Indeed. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that reminds me, I know there are more than a few times Quo has mentioned how so much of our Earth population is made up of people who came from planets where they had toxic disregard for their environment, I believe was the phrase that was used, and were responsible for making their planets inhabitable or Atlantis uninhabitable. And that is a big part of the group karma that we're living through right now. So much appreciate the lessons and teachings on that. I will get to the questions in the chat window shortly. I did have a couple other questions that I wanted to ask, if you don't mind. I know that we had mentioned one of our earlier sessions that you do have a couple books in the work. Those would be Living the Law of 102 and 103. Those would be, of course, extensions of the beautiful work that Carla did in part 101, The Choice. And if I remember correctly, these next two books are about what is described as outer and inner work. I was wondering if you can share with us a little bit, just some teachings on the difference between outer work and inner work, maybe some examples of how each of us can apply those in our daily lives.
Well, Carla had this plan originally after, at the same time she was writing 101, to follow up with this work, the outer work and the inner work. And the outer work is basically how spiritual seekers of truth can use their progress through the first four energy centers: red, orange, yellow, and the green, the heart that signifies a graduation potential for the fourth density. And this type of activation of the energy centers then can be looked upon as a means by which the seeker of truth can move into the world around it and to share its abilities to be of service to others and to work with, well, one of the things that Carla wanted to work with in there was the environment, the waters and the earth itself, and cleaning up the mess that's been made here and there around the planet. In your local community, how people could be of service there where there's a need that could be responded to. It was mostly taking the open heart of unconditional love and looking for a way to share that love with those who need it, those who are in need, and who would benefit by it, so that both the seeker with the open heart and the one needing that service would benefit by having the service offered. So it would be what you might call a win-win situation. Those who are serving others are polarizing their consciousness and becoming even more powerful as entities able to comprehend larger viewpoints, larger needs, ways to meet these needs, and to express it in the world around. Because we're, as the Law of One says, we're all one. So we need to look for opportunities to realize and share that unity with those around us. And as far as the inner work, then, this is considered basically the work of the adept that wants to go beyond the green ray energy center, the blue ray of freely given and received communication and inspiration, so that the philosophy can be shared in a way that works to actuate the indigo ray energy center eventually, because this is where the concept of consciousness itself is expressed, the gateway to intelligent infinity, the gateway to a greater consciousness where the adept can do even more work in what you might call the magical sense. White ceremonial magic is the work of the indigo ray energy center. And the definition of magic is the ability to create changes in consciousness at will. So this also assumes that you have been able to do the inner work or the outer work of the first four energy centers, and now you wish to go further and can do things such as hold a visualization of the entire planet in your mind steady for a certain length of time, so that various areas of the planet that have suffered devastation, such as Mayfield and Dawson Springs and Bowling Green and the Western United States and Turkey and Afghanistan and the entire planet, you can send images of a healing, love, and light to those areas, so that there is the potential then for a greater work to be done there upon the metaphysical level that eventually can translate to the physical level. And this is work that is done when you're able to activate these energy centers. And what Ra mentioned was even more important, is not only activating them, but to balance them so that they can work in tandem with each other and each reinforce the other, so that your energy body is totally attuned to channeling the prana, or the love light of the creator, through every energy center, and especially up into the higher energy centers where these magical works can be done. So that's a basic synopsis of the outer and the inner work. And Gary and Austin right now are working to edit 102, which is, I guess, a little combination of inner and outer work there. And I really appreciate them taking the time, because they have a lot of work. L&L Research has been blessed with many projects, and the legacy of Carla has produced many areas of future work that we are now, pursuing. The new website, of course, is one venue that has all of this work available to folks. So last August, our new website was activated, and it has got all of the 40 plus years of channelings and talks and podcasts and thoughts of folks from around the world on it that can be offered to whoever's interested. And all of it is available free of charge in the form of downloads. If you go to our library and you see the various books that are there, you click on the book, and then the PDF potential for download then pops up, so that you can download it if you would like to do that.
Such a beautiful gift to humanity. And I know that's something that struck me early when I was learning about this, realizing that all these learnings, all these spiritual teachings are being offered free of charge. If people want to buy the books, I'm sure it's a great way to support the organization. Not to mention donating is a great way to support this love and light. But the fact that L&L offers all of these things free of charge, to me, tells us something.
That was Ron's dream. That was his dream. And he had that before the internet came around.
That's right.
Fortunately, the internet did come around, and provided the opportunity to do this. Otherwise, I'm not sure how he would have done it.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be mailing out books for free. I don't think so. Hey, thank you so much for the teachings about the outer work and the inner work. I would love to come back to this and talk some more later on if we have time, but I know there's other folks who are waiting to ask you questions also. There was one other question that I did want to ask that is perhaps related to outer and inner work, and that's about archetypes. I know from reading your Camelot journal, which I cannot recommend highly enough to any students of the Law of One. It is available through the L&L research website, and it's the daily journal that you write where you offer us the teaching from Ra from 40 plus years ago, also with the benefit of your 40 years of looking back on them, on your experience on them. I enjoy reading them every day. And yeah, I know that you've been exploring archetypes in the Egyptian tarot for at least the last week or so. And for folks like myself who really know very little about it, is there anything you can share with us about it as far as how it might be important for people on the Zoomcast or people watching on YouTube to learn about archetypes or understand archetypes?
Well, basically, the archetypes are the first 22 cards, the major arcana of the tarot. Those are the ones that Ra is talking about. The minor arcana and the court arcana are not part of the archetypical mind. Those are added later on from those of Mesopotamia, and Chaldea, and they have to do more with astrology. So the first 22 have to do with the nature of spiritual evolution in mind, in body, and in spirit. So each of the mind, body, and spirit areas have 7 archetypes. And there's a relationship between all of those archetypes of the mind with the body and the spirit. In the basic outline that Ra gave us, they suggested that the archetypes could help us do what they said was to know yourself in all of your various facets as being the same as everyone else on the planet, whatever quality anybody else has. If we are all one, then we all have that quality too. If we can see those qualities in the balancing process that Ra gave us, using our catalyst every day, then we become able to know more and more who we are as a 360-degree being, the creator. Then if we can accept ourselves, which is part of the balancing process, then we are able at some point to become the creator. So the archetypes are an expansion of that simple know yourself, accept yourself, and become the creator. The way they do that is the catalyst that comes our way every day, something, whether it's positive or negative. We need to do that balancing process so that we see how we are this 360-degree being. So the very first archetype is the magician. This is a male archetype. There are male and female qualities of all the archetypes, and Ross said it's really important to realize that of those qualities, each of us, they said each male and female in the third density is also both male and female. So the first archetype is the male, the magician, the conscious mind. Now, the male here has the ability to create changes in consciousness, but it can't do anything about that until it is potentiated by its unconscious, its subconscious, the high priestess, its female nature. So between the male and the female, between the conscious and the subconscious, we know there's this veil of forgetting. So the female has the knowledge of all of our pre-incarnative choices and can bias the way we see our catalyst so that we use it the way we wish to through our pre-incarnative choices. So as they work together, then this catalyst becomes processed. And the third archetype is the catalyst of the mind, the empress, another female quality. This catalyst is worked with so that there is a greater understanding of the nature of yourself, your ability to accept yourself in whatever has caused your catalyst, whether it's great joy, great sorrow, confusion, jealousy, anything that comes your way that knocks you off your equilibrium of feeling love for the moment is catalyst that can be used to grow. And so once that catalyst is used in this process, then it's given to the emperor, the fourth archetype. And the emperor is a male. And eventually, those first four produce the knowledge of the self that is stored in the fifth catalyst, the significator of the mind, which doesn't seem to have a sexual identification. It is your significant self as far as your mind is concerned, and it comes with you throughout all incarnations. And then as you are able to continue working to use the magician and the potentiator, and the catalyst is processed and stored in the experience of the mind, and then it becomes a significator, then the two paths show up. The lovers are the two paths, the transformation of the mind. Through this whole process of knowing, accepting yourself, there is an ability to transform yourself, to become transformed. So the lovers show the first chance of the two paths, the positive and the negative path, the service to others or the service to self. That is eventually the choice that everybody will make, hopefully will make, in this third density illusion. And then the seventh of the mind is the conqueror, the chariot, which is the realization of the transformation. The choice has been made and the veil is removed. And the entity sees that it is the creator. Everything is the creator. And so this is a kind of a synopsis that kind of is a prelude to the eventual choice that is the arcanum number 22, the fool or the choice. So all of these archetypes have the ability to share with us or let us see and experience the nature of how we evolve in mind, body, and spirit. And that's the whole, it's kind of the life in a nutshell, how it all works. Without the archetypical mind, all of this evolution is still possible. It's just that the archetypical mind is created in order to give us a clearer picture of how it works, and therefore a better understanding of how we can use it and accelerate our own evolution. For as far as the body and the spirit go, we only got general information about those. You know, we have general qualities about them, and in general sense, the body is sort of the opposite of the mind in many ways. For example, the magician cannot do anything on its own without being potentiated. But now the matrix of the body is always in motion. The body's always acting. It's always got, you know, the heart beating, the lungs beating, and little kitty cats down there on the floor saying hello. He wants to go outside. It's too cold, Dandelion. So this whole process then is kind of the archetypical mind cards, the 22, are a kind of a synopsis of the whole process that helps us to accelerate our spiritual evolution.
Thank you. Wow. I will definitely have to go back and rewatch the Zoomcast to try to dig a little bit deeper into that. Obviously, sounds like a lifetime or more of stuff to learn. And I only noticed that you are pretty well answering, I think, Marcella's question there. And I'm sorry, Marcella, if I asked your question for you. Would you like to ask a follow-up to this? Would you like to ask your original question to Jim?
Yes, thank you. This was brilliant. Hello, everybody. Hi, Jim. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for asking that. Yes, I would like to actually kind of go a little bit on the two questions, I guess. It's like, how is it best to approach the study of it, I guess, and also how do you, or what is the best approach in terms of a detailed versus an abstract way bringing it to the heart, zooming it out, how to sort of process it when you're in it. I mean, I can only talk about my own experience, but I would like to know the real deal on how to approach the
Well,
study of it.
just reading what Ra has to say about the archetypes and making a notebook for yourself that has each archetype listed. And then within each archetypal picture, there are various facets. There's in the first one, the magician, there's a sword, and there's a star, approaching star. There's a cage with a bird in it. All of these have meanings. And if you can make yourself a notebook that has each of the various arcana with the various different types of beings and creatures and things, they all have a meaning. Now, one thing that was important to realize, Ross suggested, was that the meaning for all of these are meanings that are in a general sense, general guidelines. Each seeker will perceive the archetypical mind and each facet of it in a unique way. There is no hard and fast rule that says this is what it means and only this. They give general guidelines. So in your notebook, you can write down what they say. And then after you have all of this done, you can go through it and say, well, now what does that mean to me? How do I resonate with that? What's my take on this? Because all unique beings, I think unique is probably one of the words that's most used in the raw contact. Every person is unique. Every life experience is unique. We're unique in how we perceive every bit of catalyst around us. You can have 10 people looking at one situation and come up with 10 different interpretations. So get yourself a notebook and study on it. Meditate on the various qualities that Ra gives to each of the facets, and find your own way in this path that Ra suggests here through the 22 archetypes. The last of them is the great choice that we're all here to make. Now, I don't think we need the archetypical mind to help us make this choice. We know that I think everybody here wants to be of service to others, but getting to that point is enhanced by studying these concepts and meditating on them, and just trying to figure it out for yourself using what Ra has to say as a starting point, and then elaborate it on it yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcella.
Thank you. I did see a couple other questions in the chat window, and I did want to encourage anyone else on Zoom right now. If you have questions that you would like to ask, feel free to add them to the chat window. Otherwise, if you don't mind, yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit more about archetypes, because I believe Ra said that archetypal minds are different in different logoi around the universe. Is that correct, Jim?
Right. The whole idea of each logos, or all of the logoi, is to give the creator more ways of knowing itself. That's apparently the whole reason for the creation. The creator wants to know itself more and more. So all of these entities that we know of on our planet, every planet in the universe that has a population, through all the densities, give the creator ways of knowing itself by every free will choice that they make. And this is a monstrous amount of information. So the archetypical mind of each logos is slightly different. Refined is what Ross said. The further you move from the original or the primal logos, the further you go out into the infinity of the creation, the more refinements have been made by the various logoi to give their people or the entities, like in our Milky Way galaxy. We have over 250 billion stars and infinite number of entities on these planets in the various solar systems. So within this Milky Way galaxy, then we have planets like our sun that can refine the archetypical mind in some way that is an enhanced way for the creator to know itself. Now, these refinements can be infinite. However, they all are based upon the very solid beginning of the primal logos, of how the archetypes were then described and created so that the creation would be able to be a reflection of the archetypical mind. So, as Ross said, the further you go away from our particular logos, the Milky Way logos, the more abstruse and difficult it would be for us to understand those archetypical minds, because the refinements have been to such a degree that, as Ross said, the resonances were most murky to their entities. They had far wanderers, they called them, that went to these distant galaxies to be of service. But they discovered when they got there, it was like another language. Even though the basic concept were the same, the refinements were enough at variance with what they were familiar with that they had to work pretty hard to understand them. You know, it was like going to school again and starting over almost.
I find that fascinating, just to try to contemplate and try to understand that. And I wonder what that means in terms of how far the power of the archangels extends. If I'm understanding correctly, that archangels could be some archetypal version of angels, I wonder how far their power, for lack of a better word, extends. Does that question make any sense to you? Do you have any concept of what answer might be?
Well, then we have to deal with the concept of infinity.
And I was trying to avoid that.
No end. I'm sure that all of these concepts, proceed into infinity. And when I was a kid, I had this thought, well, how big's the universe? And once you come to the end of it, then what is there? It's infinite. There's no describing the infinity. There is no end to the effect that archangels or love can have. Unconditional love moves throughout the universe, which is created of love and of light. I don't think we have words to describe the process. I think words fail. I think it's something you meditate on, and then maybe you begin to get a grasp of something concerning infinity, how we are all infinite too. We're infinite beings. These personality shells that we manifest here in this third density are a very small part of what we are. We have souls that are very much more aligned with the concept of infinity than our personality shells here. We're a portion. We're like a gem, and here in this incarnation, we have a facet of the gem that's showing, and it can be pretty amazing facets, but it's just a part.
For sure. Yeah, thank you for exploring that. Trying to explain for sure. Josh, I see you have a question in the chat window. Would you like to unmute your mic and ask?
Sure. John had posted one first. If he wants to go, he can go.
No, go ahead, Josh.
Okay. Hi, Jim. I had recently finished reading autobiography of a yogi, so my mind's in that frame of reference. So I was asking, do you or anyone from LNL have experience with yoga or Kriya Yoga or the Babaji lineage teachings? If so, did this align with your law of one understandings, and how?
No, I have not gotten any experience with yoga. I love the book Autobiography of a Yogi. That's one of my favorite books of all time. I've recently been studying the Bhagavad Gita, and I know that Yogananda wrote 2 huge volumes analyzing and extrapolating the Bhagavad Gita, where well, I have not read his version. I've been studying my own. So I very much appreciate what Yogananda has been able to do. And I'm sure that whatever he has to offer in the way of self-realization, for years back in the early 70s, I was a member of the Self-Realization Fellowship, and I took their courses, and I benefited from a great deal, but I had never actually participated in any type of yoga. So I don't have any experience there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Did you have any follow-ups on that, Josh?
Not really. Well, I guess just curious, when you were in the Self-Realization Fellowship, were you initiated into Kriya? If they still did that then?
They do still do that, but I was not initiated myself. At that time, I was earning money to move to the land in central Kentucky, and that became my primary activity after that. And my study in the Self-Realization Fellowship kind of fell by the wayside, I guess you'd say.
Great question. Thank you. John Santos, did you have a question to ask?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Jim. Yes, my question is, in the time since the raw contact, has there been negatively polarized entities, either incarnate or disincarnate, that have approached you or your group in the the manner that happened during the raw contact? Does that still happen, or what has happened since that time?
Psychic greetings or psychic attacks, we tended to call them psychic greetings rather than to separate ourselves more from those entities, negative entities, because they are our brothers and sisters of another path. And at that time, during the raw contact, we attracted a lot of attention of these types of entities. And since that time, there have been occasional, what we felt were probably psychic greetings that have been offered when there was any type of a disharmony within any of the L&L family, whether, and not just the staff, but larger groups of folks around the country that might have had a problem of one or another. And sometimes that needed to be dealt with in the same way that Ross suggested, which was to send love and light to the entity that was greeting you, send love and light to the greeting, then surround yourself with an armor of light. So it recognizes the unity of all entities and not a separation, which is what the negative path accelerates and accentuates. So I think any seeker of truth that has the ability to help other people in a service to others sense and is creating a light that they are sharing with the world has the potential of attracting that type of attention. It may not be as intense as ours was with the fifth density entity. Fourth density entities have plenty of ability to accentuate whatever difficulty that you create. And that's the important point, that they cannot create a difficulty for you. You have to have the open door where you made a free will choice that was disharmonious, that did not reflect the amount of light that you are able to reflect as you stand close to the light. So whenever that type of a choice is made, then it is possible for a psychic greeting to occur. They can't just create something out of the blue for you. That's not the rules of the game, as far as I know.
Wow.
That's a great question, John. Thank you. Did you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, I was wondering specifically, what about, have you encountered any, or have you been aware of encountering any incarnate negatively polarized entities?
No, I haven't. I guess I'm fortunate in that regard. I think that negatively oriented entities are usually in higher stations of power than I will probably ever. Ross suggested if you wanted to see or discover entities that are probably pursuing the negative path, just look at people who enjoy gathering power, whether it's a politician or an army general or whoever.
Okay.
Indeed. Well said. I guess they're above your pay grade, huh?
Yeah, they don't want to bother with me.
Did you have any other questions, John? Are you good with that?
That's it. Thank you. I love those answers.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for asking. Linda, I saw that you had a question at some point. Did you want to unmute your mic and ask?
Hey, Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, Linda and Morris.
Good to see you. I have a question. I know that you and Carla also enjoyed the book Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. In your belief or your understanding, it talks about the afterlife. Is it talking about the afterlife of the inner planes or also of the outer planes?
It's talking about the life between lives of both of those, so that you look over, this is what Ra would call the review of the incarnation, basically, so that you and your guides can get together and take a look at what the goals of the previous incarnation were, how they were or were not met, what the reasons might have been. And then if you wish to pursue those in another incarnation, how would this be done? So in this whole process, we all have spiritual families, as I believe that Dr. Newton mentioned, that play different roles in each incarnation to help us all learn together what we're all trying to do. And these lessons, as Ross said, always in the third density have something to do with love, the ability to give and receive love without expectation of return, to open the heart in unconditional love. So I believe Dr. Newton was talking about how any soul that has just completed its incarnation, has gone through that review and made some choices with its guides, then would go before what they call the Council of Elders. And they would sort of ask more about what the goals were, how things went in the previous incarnation, and then give maybe some advice. And at that point, then the entity would be available to reincarnate. Now, as far as the time frame, this all occurs within time space, or the inner realms, as you were mentioning. So a reincarnation in far space time, I'm not sure exactly how that would work, how long it would take an entity in our terms of time to reincarnate. Some entities had, I think it's a variable length of time, because some incarnations were more difficult. Some incarnations are easier. And sometimes entities that had had a difficult incarnation wanted to take some time off, you might say, kind of rest and regather their energies to then later enter their future incarnation. So it deals with that time between incarnations. And Dr. Michael Newton, his work was reproduced and verified basically by Dr. Brian Weiss as well. He did the same types of in-between incarnations and got the same basic kind of information of how we work with our spiritual families to learn our lessons, and everyone helps each other out in that. And they might trade roles from time to time. A mother might become a child in the next incarnation, or vice versa, and other ways too. So it was fascinating work, and I read that to Carla before she passed away. I read her a number of books in that area, I guess probably 8 altogether by Dr. Brian Weiss and Dr. Michael Newton. And they all just sounded like that was the way it probably works. It just sounded like it made sense to us.
Do wanderers, when they pass from this incarnation, do they go to that same place that third density spirits are bouncing around, looking at their Akashic records and doing their little studies?
That we do not have specific information on. Dr. Newton was dealing with 29 people, and Dr. Weiss had about the same amount. So there wasn't a large spectrum of the population. So they didn't come across entities that they would describe as being so different that we would call them wanderers. As far as what we know about wanderers and their incarnations, apparently each wanderer makes a pact or a contract, you might say, with the Council of Saturn to enter the earth planes in order to be of service in a certain way. Each wanderer has certain talents and skills that they will offer if they're able to remember, as anyone who would like to remember their pre-incarnative choices. Not all wanderers remember. Rog gave those percentages in one of the sessions that suggested that the amount of wanderers who remember their incarnative plans, remember their wanderers, is pretty small. It was only about 10 to 20% overall that had an idea that there might be a wanderer. So it depends a lot on that contract or agreement that's made with the Council of Nine or the Council of Saturn as to what the purpose of the incarnation will be. Some wanderers have been here on the earth, according to Ra, for 50,000 years, which suggests incarnation after incarnation. More have come within the last 200 years, because this is the time of the end of the third density cycle, and when most of the work that remains to be done needs to be done. So it's hard to say with a wanderer just exactly how long it would take to reincarnate. It depends more for them upon their previous plan. And that's the best I could give you information on that topic.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Linda. Thank you for asking. Did you have any other follow-ups on that? No, that's good. Thank you for asking. I am looking in the chat window. Josh has a follow-up question to that topic. Do you want to unmute your mic and ask Josh?
Yes, thank you. While you were describing that, I had a thought or question. So in between incarnations, when you're reviewing and you go before the Council of Elders, reviewing past incarnation goals, is that when like they would decide if your soul or spirit evolves to the next density, or is it more automatic based on the 51% service to others and the council is not involved? If you even know or could answer.
Well, apparently the graduation process occurs as a potential for everyone at this time as they leave their physical body and begin to walk into what you would call the light. This light is assessing your violet ray chakra, which has a mark or a register. It's like a thermometer of how you've balanced your energy centers and how much you've been able to open your heart. And if you're able to give that love 51% of the time, then that's measured by the light that you walk into. And basically the way it works is that as you proceed into the light, you are able to take more and more of that light in until it becomes too glaring and you no longer are able to take it because it's just too much. And then you step aside. And as you step aside, then you notice that either you're in the fourth density, beginning of fourth density, or you're still in third density. Now, this process is looked over by your higher self and your guardians, and some of the entities of the Confederation who are there along the pathway into the light to be sure that every entity has a chance to go as far as possible into the light as it can and does not stumble or fall away for any reason other than the brightness of the light. So there are guides and angelic presences, and your higher self is there to help you to go as far as you possibly can. And your ability to share love at least 51% of the time then is reflected in that violet ray energy center that is, you might say, monitored or scanned by the light. And that's basically, according to Ra, the way the harvest process works for each entity. And each entity apparently now, when they leave the incarnation, has a chance to walk into that light.
Thank you. So I guess that my understanding is that that's a separate process or timing from the review with the council, and that happened now that we're coming to the end of the third density cycle. That happens for everyone. However, I guess out of the end of the third density cycle, not necessarily, but the review with the council would happen every time between incarnations.
I have a hunch, and this is just my thought, I could be wrong about this, that after each person is able to walk into the light, those who are able to graduate to the fourth density then become members of the fourth density Earth, which is now forming and acquiring its population. I would think that the entities who walked into the light and who were not able to make it to fourth density then would probably be joined by their guides who are with them on that walk. And they would probably go back to that process that I described that Dr. Newton talks about. But they would first have the opportunity to walk into the light. I could be wrong, but I think that's the way it works.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great questions, Josh. Thank you for asking. I noticed there were a couple people who joined our Zoom call just recently within the last 5 minutes or so. Did want to welcome those folks who are just joining us and wanted to let you know we are actually getting near the end of our hour, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so. And I wanted to encourage you to ask a question if you have a question. There is a little chat button at the lower part of your screen. If you click on that, should be able to open the chat window. If you want to type your question in there, that would be great. Or you could raise your hand or something. I don't know. Otherwise, I did have one other follow-up question on the subject, Jim. And I'm trying to remember did the channeling team during the raw contacts, were they aware of Dr. Newton's work? Or did that come afterwards? I'm not sure where in
quite a bit afterwards. Yeah, his work came quite a bit afterwards. I think it was after the turn of the century, actually.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, just fascinating how closely those accountings, explanations match of what happens to us in between incarnations. It is fascinating stuff. And I had not heard of Dr. Brian Weiss. Is that more recent then?
No, he was contemporary. Their work was at just about the same time. They're both well-respected psychiatrists counseling patients and using regressive hypnosis to do so. And they both had a patient that all of a sudden was not in a past life, but in between lives, and talking to this counselor, talking to guides and so forth. And they were pretty amazed because this, was outside their realm of experience up to that point. So they all of a sudden discovered there's a lot more to this than we thought.
Yeah, amazing. Didn't know that. Do you recall off the top of your head the title of Dr. Weiss's book or books, if people want to look that up?
Many Lives, Many Mansions was one. There were a couple others that I don't remember right now.
I think we can look up.
Dr. Newton had The Journey of the Soul and Destiny of the Soul, which is a follow-up to Journey of the Soul.
Right, those were Dr. Newton's books.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, Marcella is saying many lives, many masters.
Yes, thank you for that, Marcella.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And it reminds me of times that I believe Quo has mentioned that we've been elementals at one time in our spiritual journey. We've been fire and earth and water and air and plants and animals, and who knows. Do you have any idea how many incarnations we each went through before we became a person? And geez, how many human incarnations we might have had to go through to get to this point?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. We asked Ra about their evolutionary process at one point, and they gave us real synopsis of first density, earth, wind, fire, and water, second density animals. And went all through it. And it suggested that they were together then somehow, that, that which would become the raw social memory complex in the fourth density sort of knew each other in the first density and in the second density. That was just the impression I got. Again, I might have gotten the wrong impression.
That's trippy. Yeah, I seem to remember one time, and I haven't been able to find it since I read it the first time, but I seem to remember a time when Don asked basically, how far along are we as a collective in our spiritual evolution, you know, world-wise, plant-wise, social memory complex-wise. Like, I think he was trying to get a sense for like, how far are we along in this process? Are we like 10%, 20%, 50%? And I honestly don't remember what the response was. Does that question sound familiar to you? Do you have any recollection of the question or what the answer?
Well, I remember Don asking when the harvest would be completed. And Ross suggested, well, due to the volatility of your peoples, it's hard to say. Right now, it looks like it'd be somewhere between 100 and 700 years. Now, this process began shortly before World War II, around 1935. So we're about 70 or 80 years into it. So who knows?
I think it was a different question, and I wish I could remember the exact question or the session that it happened in, and I might be remembering it incorrectly, but I seem to get the gist of the question. He was just trying to get an idea of how far along humanity is in our collective evolution. And I guess you could look at the timeline in terms of third density and fourth density, and who knows how long it'll take to get beyond that.
They said that our planet itself was in fourth density. The planet is fourth density, but it has various groupings within it that are locked in the orange ray and the yellow ray, as well as some that are harvestable in the green ray. But it looks like the harvest will be small at this time. However, in 6512, they had that wonderful thing, you know, could your planet polarize in one fine, strong moment of inspiration? Yes, my friends, it is not probable, but it is ever possible.
And I think about that every time I'm in the supermarket cereal aisle, every single time. It's a great little trigger for me. Yeah, for sure. Well, am I understanding correctly that the Earth exists in all densities at point? There just may be more in potential state or manifested sense.
Some are potentiated, but our Earth has the fourth density activated.
Right.
And just waiting for its children to catch up. Mother Earth is very patiently waiting for her children to catch up.
Extraordinarily patient, I would say. Yeah. Hey, that reminds me of one other question to ask, and I'm only doing this because I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat window at this time. Kind of relates to what we were talking about just before about wanderers and where we're at. I know there were questions asked in the raw contact about how many wanderers there were on Earth at that particular time in the early 1980s. And I seem to recall the answer being something like 65 million. And I know I have seen Quo give the equivalent of progress reports as far as how humanity is doing at that particular time. And the last time I think I saw something like that was like in 2007 or something. And Quo said that they were very pleased with how things were going, and they were surprised that the state of Earth and humanity was as good as it was at that point in 2007. Do you have any sense for what Quo might give as a progress report for where we're at these days? And like how many wanderers there might be on Earth these days compared to the early 80s?
I think somewhere around 2015 or 16, Quo did give us a figure of about 600 million wanderers.
Wow.
Now, also, you need to remember that back in 1981, there was another phenomenon occurring of entities who had already graduated on other third density planets. They'd made the harvest, and they'd come to Earth early to help with the harvest here. And they were called those entities with double activated bodies. The third and the fourth bodies were activated. And at that time, there were 35,000. It was a new phenomenon. Now, we didn't get any figures on that, but I would assume that there's a great deal more of those entities here now too. And I think those are what Carla called the crystal children or the indigo children. They were called systems busters. They're finding ways, new ways of doing things, and of organizing and cooperating as groups here on Earth. So I imagine there's a lot of those around now too, hopefully.
Do you have any sense for what Quo might give us as far as prospects for positive, negative harvest at this time compared to
No,
10
every
million
time
years
we've
ago?
asked anybody, especially Rob, about that, they said there was really no way to predict or to say that, and there was no virtue in the counting.
Indeed. Yeah, that was a good reminder. Thank you. Hey, looks to me like we're coming down to the end of our hour, and I'm looking in the chat window and I'm not seeing any other questions there. If anybody else has a question they would like to ask at this time, this would be a great time to do it. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody had a question above that I missed. Kate? Or somebody whose name is Kate Chavez? Or Mark from North Carolina. Did you have a question that you'd like to ask? Go ahead. Yeah, Mark, please feel free to unmute your mic and ask. And I'm sorry for missing you earlier.
Okay, no problem. I'm signed in under my wife's name, so that's why it's a little confusing. But anyway, I did want to know, so if you are one of those people that graduates, you move on to the fourth density, right? So what happens to the people that you knew in this lifetime that don't graduate and go to fourth density?
I really don't know. I have no idea. Everyone who graduates would be here on planet Earth for the fourth density and would form a social memory complex. The fact that we are members of spiritual families would suggest that there would be some sort of contact that could be made. And this is just an opinion, that if a family member did not make it, a relative, maybe in the fourth density experience that you could become a guide for such an entity and continue that relationship of the spiritual family. That's just something that came to me here. So that's the only possibility I would know of. I don't even know that. I just imagine that could be. Because we're all connected. I mean, we are all one. Eventually, we all will get together again. And there won't be any leaving behind of anybody. For the short run, it might seem like we're not all together. But eventually, whether it's in the dream state or in the fourth density or the fifth or whenever, we'll all come together again. All families will become one and we will become the creator together.
That's a great question. Great response. Thank you. Did you have any follow-ups to that, Mark?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I would think that's something that a lot of people think about, have concerns about. And I would only trust and hope that, as they have said many times, that it's a matter of faith that all is well and all will be well. And wherever one goes on the steps of light is going to feel like heaven to them. It's going to be great wherever they go. At least that's the thought that comes to my tiny little brain at this time. And it looks to me like we are about out of time for today. Jim, was there anything you wanted to say as final words before we part ways this time?
Well, thank you all for your questions and your love and light. I can feel the love and light in your questions. And these questions and answers, whether it's with me and you or you and somebody else, this is the way we all learn together in this illusion, because everybody has something to offer. Everybody has spiritual experiences that are very meaningful and powerful. And when we share them with each other, then we get a larger picture of how it all works. And we know that we're not alone, that we're all working together. And this is something that is very inspiring to me, because there's just so much harmony and love and inspiration that we can all give to each other. Ross said that those who have like mind together seek shall far more surely find. And that's the way we do it. We all do it together. And for a while, it might look like somebody has more answers, but a little further down the road, somebody else has got answers. And we all share it. That's the way to do it. Open our hearts in unconditional love and do it together. We are all one. And I love you all. Thank you so much for your help today.
Thank you so much, Jim. Such a privilege and a joy and honor to spend time with you. Thank you for everyone who's joining us on this Zoom call. Thank you for everyone who's watching this on YouTube or whatever. Blessings to all in the love and light of the one creator. Until next time, Adonai, namaste.
Namaste.